Happy Pride World! Happy World Pride! It's a beautiful weekend, and wherever you are in the world, good morning, buenas tardes, sawadee tanyen, mapagpalang Sabado. I am Miss Mela Habijan, Miss Trans Global 2020, and the host of the first ever queer dating reality show in the Philippines, Sparks Camp. And it is my honor to moderate this meaningful panel discussion in uplifting the trans and queer spirits. Welcome to Global Trans Conversation. Where do we go from here? It's such a meaningful question to reflect on nowadays, especially the trans people, the entire queer community, people of color, and diverse identities are under attack. The US government, under the presidency of Donald Trump, has signed transphobic executive orders. In addition, Republican lawmakers have begun their attempts to overturn marriage equality. In the UK, its Supreme Court has heartbreakingly limited the definition of a woman and a man into biological sex. In Hungary, its federal government, the Hungarian government, has banned pride. While in Trinidad and Tobago, homosexuality has been recriminalized. But the month of May is a reminder that we queer people will never back down. We will stand against these hateful politics. In May, we celebrate Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. In May, we honor Trans History Week. In May, we champion International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, Intersexphobia, and Transphobia. And as we approach Pride Month, let this discussion be a guiding light towards a shared vision and direction. Where do we go from here? A panel discussion brought to us by AQUA DC in partnership with TransPride DC in time for World Pride 2025. And joining us are three empowered trans individuals from different parts of the world who have rooted their purpose on their trans identities. And we are excited to hear their insights and stories. Our first panelist is a proud indigenous Itauke Fijian trans feminist activist. With over a decade-long commitment to advancing human rights, gender justice, and LGBTQIA plus advocacy, she now serves as the policy coordinator at Utopia Washington, a queer and trans-Pacific Islander-led organization, and is the vice chair of the Washington State LGBTQIA plus Commission. Friends, let's all welcome the power woman, Miss Amasai Jeke. Good morning.
Good morning, Mela.
It's so nice to have you here with us, Miss Amasai. We'll talk later. Now, our next panelist is an advocate and mentor for trans masculine community in San Diego, California. He also has activism experience in sex education, kink or leather, and adoption abolition. Excited to bring his intersectional experiences to this discussion, Sanjay Pulvar.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sanjay. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's definitely our pleasure. And last but definitely not the least is a Thai transgender social media influencer, educator, and activist. Equipped with an expertise in journalism and mass communication, she spearheaded Not Too Late to Be Equal, which focuses on transgender rights and women empowerment. She is a proud recipient of the prestigious scholarship grants Waisili and Shivning. Friends, Thailand's pride, Miss Sarah Wanakot.
สวัสดีค่ะ Good morning.
สวัสดีค่ะ Sarah. It's good to have these three power trans people in our discussion. So let's begin. To all of you, I just want to ask, how are you nowadays? How do you feel that the world has been changing and this change is not in favor of our community? Let's start with Miss Amasai.
Thank you so much for having me here today. But firstly, I come to this conversation as an indigenous Itoke Fijian trans woman living and organizing in the United States on the stolen lands of the Coast Salish people, and also while holding deep connections to my ancestral ocean and my Pacific lineage. And so I acknowledge those that have been here before time immemorial, organizing in this beautiful country. Um, well, it's it's currently like a roller coaster ride, just up and down, with everything that's happening politically. Um, but also there's a very huge connection between what's political and what's personal because they're the same. They're very much intersectional and intertwined in the way that we move on this earth as human beings. But it's different for us as queer and trans people because it's our very much existence that is under attack. And so for us, our lived experiences and our reality is like it's like a ticking bomb right now, you know. We're like the most wanted people in this kind of movie act that we're in, that we're constantly under attack, because simply for just living our truth. And to me, that's become very, very problematic because, you know, as queer and trans people, we seem to be very resilient in the face of adversity and the way that this political climate that we're in right now. But it's still that kind of always having to check the check boxes to see whether we're safe, to see whether we still have access to resources that is very much needed as for trans individuals, and just being able to move around, the freedom to do that. And I know that not everyone is rendered that ability of freedom to move and to mobilize in the way that we're currently situated right now. But I know that as queer and trans people, we always overcome such barriers because we're very resilient people. Come on, we paint the streets bright colors with the way that we show up uh, to each other. Yeah.
I love how you highlighted resilience. And I think being equipped with this kind of resilience is the igniter of hope. And hope is what we need right now. Hope is what we need to center on our energy as people, as you say, who are ticking bombs right now, who are really fighting for our lives. So thank you for highlighting that, Miss Amasai. Now let me ask Sanjay. Sanjay, how are you?
Oh, what a loaded question for early on a Saturday morning. Um, you know, I think I'm doing all right considering, but as Miss Amasai said, when our literal existences and lives are being targeted and uh, attempts at being eradicated, it's hard to be okay. It's hard to go through the day to day and just go, yep, all right, I got to go to the grocery store and I got to go pay my bills. But, um, I think one thing that comes to mind for me here in the United States, particularly, is this dichotomy of trans people are such an inherent threat to everything going on, but at the same time, we are not strong enough or qualified enough to serve in the military. So it's kind of we're this, we're like the boogeyman in which like we're this really scary thing, but at the same time, we don't have a lot of power. We don't actually have the strength that people think we do. So trying to walk that line of, okay, if I'm interacting with somebody, am I going to be perceived as the threat, or are they going to be go, oh, you're trans, we're not worried about you because you can't actually do anything to us. um but I think the biggest thing I think about is that we as queer people, as trans and gender expansive people, have been organizing and doing this work long before the age of the internet. We know how to gather, we know how to organize, we know what to do. We still thankfully have our elders around who have been doing this work for decades, and we know we have the tools and we don't have to reinvent the wheel as far as organizing efforts. We can just modify them for the internet age so that we can create more robust support networks for ourselves and mutual aid and all of those things. But it's not like we're starting from square one as far as active organizing and finding community. We've been doing it for a long time before. We will continue to do it for a long time after. So it's not like we're all isolated trying to figure out how do we do this thing.
Absolutely. That's why we're all here, even if we are um, actually being hindered by distance right now. We're still connected in this Zoom arena, trying to make sure that we organize ourselves. And it hit me, Sanjay, when you said it's hard to be okay. But I guess when you and Miss Amasai highlighted the fact that our resilience is brought down by the people before us, that's where hope comes in. It's the inspiration that they have through us. That's why I guess we will be okay despite being hard to experience whatever okay means. And I'd like to check in on Sarah. Sarah, how are you?
As a transgender activist, I never feel okay in this situation. I feel like it's been a step backward for trans rights globally. And I started to see so many people in our community sharing their own experiences after the change in the global world that they face more like discriminations. Me personally, living abroad, I have found out that there's so many people using the trends to attack us in some kind of way. For example, they use the word ladyboy to mock on me or mock on my transgender friends, like that we are still boy, and uses that a very, very offensive word. And at the same time, I got like criticized or talked by some kind of straight people, like questioning whether I should use like women toilet or men toilet. And I think it's because of the trend that has been going on. So people are more eager to talk about that, and they base their reasoning like to like Trumps and to like so many people that are against that. And that's made me feel so sad because I think before 2 or 3 years, I never got questioned this like eagerly from people in front of my face. But because the trend has been shifted, so people use this kind of trend to attack that. And at the same time, I try to check on a lot of my trans peer and not only transgender friends, but also the non-binary people as well, that like, are you okay? Because right now the situation has been shifted. But at the same time, I want them to prioritize their mental health first. If they're not okay to be online, just stay with themselves first. When they okay, just started to voice out again, because we need a voice and we need to voice out our opinion in this kind of situation. And at the same time, I feel like it's gonna be okay. I'm hopeful that the situation will be shifted into the right direction for us in the future.
Amen. Amen. It's gonna be okay no matter what happens. And I'm seeing Miss Amasai dancing at the moment because before our our ancestors, the people before us, like fighting for our rights, they actually danced.
Yeah.
Dancing was one of the way to actually live through the challenging times. And I'd like us to talk about history. Especially yesterday, I had a TED talk, and one of the aspects that I actually told the audience was the importance of trans people in our history. And in the Pacific Islands, it's very evident that trans people were present and they were respected and revered. So I want to bring the conversation to you, Miss Amasai. In Fiji, let's talk about our ancestors. How were they regarded? Who are they? What are their stories? I think you're on mute at the moment, Miss Amasai. And this happens every
Oh,
time we have this kind of
technology.
discussion.
Yes. Um,
Technology it is, but technology binds us. So go
yeah.
ahead, Miss Amasai.
So in Fiji, our cultural identity as trans people or trans women particularly is known as Vakasala Lawa. And this a really it's really a broader term used for the embodiment of womanhood or the embody of being a woman. Um, and so before pre-colonialism or colonization, there were existence of Aksalialawa, but and then religious um, Mongory came to Fiji and said that we were, a group of very sinful people, and we were not supposed to even exist. And I remember back in 2016, we had our first ever Pacific Feminist Forum in Fiji, and I was on a panel with a group of indigenous women. And we were talking, and then I was talking about, the ways that trans people or trans women, particularly in Fiji, have been organizing for a very long time to share space, to be in space, um, to be in sisterhood with our cisgendered folks. And so we were having conversation, and she said, I remember vividly back in the days that we had um, men who were very feminine. Uh, and my grandfather used to talk about it. They had very specific role in our villages, and they were the ones who had to write stories, or what we call in Fiji, na naivuzu, to write stories or songs that would tell our history. But then we no longer see these roles anymore, because religion came and the white people told us that this is wrong. And of course, because of white people, we were then um, washed, in terms of the way that people identified back then. And so, yes, the existence of Aksalia Lewa, or the feminine embodiment of men, existed then. And even now, just seeing people, particularly the trans community in Fiji, organizing in different spaces and just being visible. The trans movement in Fiji is really at the forefront of the social justice movement. And just seeing that happen, and just seeing that there's so many trans organizations in Fiji, and a shout out to the folks from TAG Fiji, Diva for Equality, WorldPride Foundation, and these organizations that are doing amazing work, not only in Fiji, but also in the Pacific region, and also globally. And just seeing that even now existed in different spaces is, what Laverne Cox would say is an act of revolutionary. And so that really is just a lot of things, especially when we reclaim our identity in different spaces that we're in. Just to say that I identify as a Vakasali Lewa, or as a Mahu from Hawaii, as a Fafafine from Samoa, a Leti or Fakaleti from Tonga, Palapa from my sisters from Papua New Guinea, and sister girls from the folks in Australia, and just a lot of these identities that are very much linked to one another, that really speaks to the pre-colonialism push and indoctrination into our region, that we existed before time. And Mela, you said it perfectly in the beginning, that we were here before, and we're still here now. And of course, we'll be here even after all this chaotic political situation that we're in. And that as indigenous people, or indigenous trans people, that hold this identity so dear to our hearts, that we can never be erased. And I also, in the line of acknowledgement, two-spirit people that existed even before time immemorial here in the US. And there's proof, and there's stories, and there's ways that we hear Two-Spirit people here in the US talk about these lived experiences. And even there's documentaries of stories of Mahu in Hawaii that really speak to these lived experiences in truth. But knowing that there weren't so much stories throughout the Pacific region to document this, but even through that documentation of other identities in the Pacific region, it gives us um, the empowerment and the ability to also then write our own stories. If trans people can dream and also to even think about ways to write our narrative now, and that's amazing because we should be able to, no matter what, in our different regions and countries, to write our own narratives and stories as Indigenous trans people that hold Indigenous identities in our different culture.
That is music to my ears. To be able to write our own narratives, our own stories based from the stories of our ancestors. And one of the things that I've learned from you before our panel discussion started is that the our trans siblings in the Pacific region are now gathering and creating this revolutionary unification of trans-Pacific Islanders. Can you talk more about that?
Yes, so shout out to my queen mother, Felicia Brown Acton, a fierce trans activist, well known in the region and everywhere else, who coined the term MVP FAF, which really speaks to the different trans identities or gender identities in the Pacific region. And that is now used, besides using Soji-ISK, we also now use that identity to then really unpack our roles in culture and tradition, our roles in community, and it also ensures that we use that identity in our different ways of organizing in our different communities. And that's really one of the most beautiful pieces ever. Now that that term is used globally by researchers, by academia to tell our stories. And also even here in the US, there's a beautiful group movement that has just begun, which is known as the Cutie Pie Village, the Queer and Trans-Pacific Islander Village. And this consists of different queer and trans-Pacific Islander advocates, activists who are really organizing here in the US and are moving, shifting a lot of the paradigms in the conversation around how uh, Cutie Pie here in diaspora organizing in different spaces and really bringing that lived experiences here because there is an assumption that as Pacific Island people, even Asians, we all would relate to one another is when we move away from home, we're simply not part of home anymore. But
Mhm.
that's not true. We are very much connected to our land and to our culture and to our tradition, no matter where we go. It doesn't make me less a Fijian or as an Itoke when I live here in the US. And so I really want to highlight that, because there's this identity politics that we need to talk about that when I move away from home it doesn't make me less Pacific Islander or less Fijian when I try to highlight and speak about the lived experiences of things that are happening back in the region, because there's really this connection to the work, it's connection to our culture and tradition, and it's something that really grounds us wherever we move in the world.
Absolutely. And I want to take on that. Like, I think you're not becoming less of who you are, but you are becoming more because the world sees you. There are more people looking at you and knowing that, oh, there's a Fijian, beautiful, powerful Fijian woman in my vision right now, and she's a representative of a culture that I don't know of. So you are enriching the world by letting us see who a portion of your community is. So thank you. Thank you for your visibility. And I think that means a lot for your people back home. Now I want to go to Sanjay. Your activism in San Diego is unique because you're using the different aspects of you as a trans man. Um, I'd like to dive into how active you are right now in the activism, and how did this activism push you more as a representative of the trans masculine community in California?
So, right now, a lot of my activism is focused on just being visible in my community, showing up to events. And I do also want to mention that while I am speaking about my activism in California, it is important to, for me at least, to acknowledge that there is importance in being disconnected from our diasporas in whatever capacity that looks like. For me, I am a survivor of the global adoption trade. And so for me, I was forcibly removed from India at a very, very young age. I've been in San Diego for the majority of my life, and therefore I am completely disconnected from my culture, my community, et cetera, et cetera. And therefore, my take on what is happening in India, maybe I don't have all of the information because I am not connected, but that, like Ms. Amasai was saying, that does not completely disconnect me from the fact that I am still representing trans people in India to some degree, even if I don't have any inroads into what is currently happening or have the network there. But back to your question about San Diego and in California, like I said, for me, it's mostly visibility. I, unfortunately, due to work and life, I haven't done a whole lot of going up to our capital to speak to legislators, although that is something I would like to do more of in the future. Um, a lot of my activism currently is also centered around the intersections of my transgender experience and my adoption experience, because there are a lot of parallels there that I don't think folks are very aware of. So even though I may not be as public about my activism, the things that I am doing, like talking to people about resources, and just if friends are like, hey, I am questioning things about my gender and my sexuality, I'm like, what questions you got? I will do my best to answer them. And if I don't have the answers, I will direct you to somebody who does, because at least I do have a very strong network of connections who are very reliable, and I can get people information. So maybe I'm not on the front lines, but I'm doing a lot of behind the scenes work, kind of being like a connecting piece for other folks.
And I'd like to believe that there are no front lines and back lines. As long as you're visible, you are wearing the trans tie, you are
Yes,
living
I
trans man, you are already at the forefront of activism, because being visible is an act of resistance in itself. And I guess one aspect of my TED Talk, which can help you as well in exploring your Indian roots, is that in the Mahabharata, Shikhandi is a trans man warrior, and she's appreciated in the Mahabharata because apparently when he transformed, or when he transitioned into being a man, that's the time in which his destiny of seeking for justice
Mhm,
um, was restored, was reformed rather. So
mhm.
maybe that's a good starting point for you to explore on.
I appreciate that. Thank you, since I know for India, most knowledge of trans folks centers around hijras, or traditionally trans feminine people, and there aren't, as far as I am aware, many instances of trans masculine people, or figures in Indian mythology, literature, etc., aside from the one figure you just named. So I do appreciate that as a starting point of what I hope will be a very enlightening rabbit hole.
Absolutely. And we're looking forward to that, to your journey. And speaking of journey, you have been journeying on activism, Sarah,
Mhm.
and from Thailand now to the UK. You being visible on social media has actually deepened the understanding of what it is to be a Kathoy, as
Mhm.
they say. Um, Looking into the history of being a transgender person, and I asked you this before our conversation, there have been myths that um, for families to have transgender children, they're considered lucky in the Buddhism culture. Can you enlighten us about this subject matter?
Mhm. I think this is the first time that I heard of that because living in Thailand as a Buddhist as well, a lot of people kind of shame me as choosing a path of being transgender woman. When I was young, they said that like, oh, if you chose to be a trans woman, I don't think that you can grant any space in the society, or I don't think that you can become a successful person. I think that you're gonna like fail in relationship, and I think you will not be this and that just because I chose a path of being a trans woman. Therefore, I think in Buddhism, they have something called a karma of LGBTQ people. A lot of people in the village or like in the rural area that I live in, they told me that I think you have a karma from your past life because maybe you might cheated on your wife in the past life. That's why you were born as a trans woman or as LGBTQ. Therefore, I never heard of like a blessing thing from like people to be calling like a trans kid as a blessing. I think it can be in India, but like I'm not sure about like in Thailand in particular because I never heard of that. And I think a lot of time growing up, a lot of transgender in my age, we try to prove that is not right to have a stereotype of us as an unsuccessful person. That is why I pursue my academic very seriously. I pursue my life very seriously, and I prove them that I can do everything in otherwise of what they have said that I'm gonna be failing in my life.
Thank you for that enlightenment. And because of that, can you share right now what are the things, especially now that Thailand has been on the spotlight when trans support on trans health was actually discussed this year.
Mhm.
Marriage equality has been signed by the king already. How
Mhm.
is this helping the revolution in Thailand? And also at the same time, what else do we need for our LGBTQIA plus community?
Exactly. Thank you for the question. It's such a beautiful question. I'm so proud that my country has advanced marriage equality and also the hormonal therapy for transgender people in Thailand. I think it's a progress that we has been asking for such a long time. We has been working toward this for such a long time. And with the help of people on social media, is contributed to a significant like step because we ask for signature online and we gather a lot more than 300,000 signature, and that is why we can put this forward into the legalization. However, I think we have to congratulate on the winning that we have And we also have to progress to the next step. The next step, what we want and we should have is the gender recognition law for transgender people. Because right now, people are still in like an argument whether we should have it or not. A lot of people saying that like if a trans woman have miss as a pronoun, maybe some trans women might deceive a guy that like, oh, I'm a 100% like natural born woman. And that is a very, very offensive argument for us as a transgender because I think we are so proud about our gender identity. We will not like deceive anyone of like being like natural born women because I think transgender woman is also a part of a womanhood. And I think with gender recognition law, it will help us progress in a very like progressive way because right now I have seen the news of a transgender woman in Thailand traveling to some specific country and they has been asked a lot of questions why they like gender identity is like very feminine like in physical appearance but the legal documents still state that they are still men. As you know, like Thai transgender women, they look like very feminine. They have a very feminine feature, and sometimes they get to be like sent back to Thailand just because they don't match with the legal document. And that is why we want to move forward in that thing. And at the same time, if you are transgender woman or trans man, and then you go to the hospital, they call you in like using the natural born gender pronouns. Like you look like women, but then they call you like Mr. And it's make us feel shameful in front of public eyes. And that is causing a lot of problem as well. And that is why we need to move forward on for that.
I am with you because the Philippines also needs gender recognition law at the moment,
Exactly.
but we still haven't like moved forward into the forefront of our fight because we still don't have an anti-discrimination law that protects everyone on the basis of our gender, of our SOGIESC. I'd like to ask Sanjay, now that you are, how important it is that healthcare and gender recognition law is experienced by you at the moment as someone who is living in the US?
So I have updated all of my documents aside from my citizenship certificate. So I was a naturalized citizen because I was not born in the United States. So I am currently in the waiting process of that document being updated to align with the rest of my legal documentation. Thankfully, my passport is up to date, and that is fine. But that does pose a serious concern for me because the my documents aren't completely consistent yet. And I didn't actually know that you could update your citizenship certificate until about 2020. And then, as we all know, life happens. And so I had to, I think I didn't wait too long, but I wish I jumped on it sooner. Um, so that's the one big concern that's still sort of hanging over my head. But as far as healthcare and things like that, and how I sort of move through the world currently, I am very fortunate that being in California and being on the West Coast of the United States, we enshrine equality and non-discrimination into our state constitutions. So for myself and Miss Amasai, if she wants to speak to this as well, we're fortunate that we can be fairly certain that even if the federal government and Trump try to do things, our states will say no. We will still continue to provide care. We are still going to make sure that you are respected as individuals. Your community is safe, or as safe as it can be. So I am fortunate in that sense. But that still does not exclude me from still experiencing misogyny in places like medical settings, especially when it comes to, if I have an issue, it's, oh, well, are you sure? Like, why? Like, basically, it's, my symptoms are not believed. I'm not taken seriously. Just the things that, you know, most women, regardless of your experience of womanhood, experience. Just because I grew a beard does not make me exempt from still experiencing misogyny. And I think that is a big thing that people don't quite understand, of the transmasculine experience. And I think also there is a level, I would say, of erasure of the transmasculine experience, at least within the US's perspective, because unfortunately, all of the legislation coming out right now is primarily targeting trans women and trans feminine people, which obviously is not okay at all. But nobody thinks, oh, right, there's a bunch of trans guys that this is going to impact too. So it's almost feeling like I'm doing this work, but there's still an erasure and an invisibility within the movement that at least I sometimes experience. So it's tricky to navigate, and especially with the rollback of women's rights and reproductive justice rights in the United States, like Roe v. Wade, which had made abortion legal across the United States. If I'm trying to advocate for reproductive justice, people will look at me and say, well, you're a man. What would you know about abortion and reproductive justice? And it's like, well, actually, a lot more than a lot of people think I do, actually. So it's sort of a fine line to walk of advocating and being taken seriously for my experiences, even though in the larger picture, most of the country probably doesn't even know that I exist. So it's, or if they do, and I say, oh, I'm trans, their first questions are usually, oh my gosh, congratulations, when are you starting estrogen? And I tell them no, and then they look very, very confused. So that's kind of how it is right now. But as I said earlier, I firmly believe that the organizing of like the younger generations through social media and the internet, there is a lot more cohesion in the community. And I think that is really going to be what gets us through this. And that I am very hopeful for.
And that's what we should look forward to. The cohesion and collaboration between all letters of the LGBTQIA plus spectrum must go hand in hand so that everyone is represented and everyone gets to be visible and everyone protects each other. I just want to follow up, Sanjay, from your perspective. What are your suggestions on how we can foster collaboration so that no one is erased from our LGBTQIA plus existence?
Oh gosh. Well, my suggestions are just suggestions. They came from my own brain. So what works for me might not work for you. As we like to stay in the United States with cars and things like that, your mileage may vary. So, take what works, leave what doesn't. I think there I think there just needs to be more dialogue and cohesion just within local communities first, and then building that out into larger networks, because I know we sometimes like to cordon ourselves off to what is familiar in our own communities and our own subsets of our own communities, because there is a safety there, there is a comfort there, and recognizing that the other parts of our community have just as much to offer as far as resources and support, I think is something to keep in mind, and not being afraid to get out of our comfort zones a little bit and engage with the people in our community that we may not usually engage with. Is that always the does that always yield the best results? No. And we all know that. We've all experienced that in some way, shape, or form. But it's a lot of trial and error, but you do find your people, you find your connections, you find your allies and your accomplices and your co-conspirators. And from there, you just build your own little network first. And that person probably knows somebody who knows somebody who's doing something else. And, it's just, you just spread your own network, connect to more people, and start small. If you have even one safe person or two safe people, start there. That's easy to do, and the networks will grow.
I agree with you. Start with small connections, and from there, you build further on with your relationships. Now, I want to speak with Miss Amasai because I know that the west part of the US is quite more accepting of queer people in terms of policies. But of course, um, uh, we must not stay like comfortable in this aspect. We must also guard the rights that we are experiencing right now. So, as an advocate, what do you think should we do so that we can protect and we are not complacent with what's happening right now?
Thank you. Yes, Washington State is such an amazing state in the US. Um, but also, even though there's so many very progressive legislation that's been passed, we just wrapped up our long legislative session last week, and currently the governor is signing most of this legislation into laws. And one of the, I would say that one of the amazing thing that meaning me and the organization that I work for, but also other LGBTQ organizations have been championing this House Bill 1296, which provides safety and privacy for for students in school. And so, but there's a lot of controversy that's happening, misinformation that's happening here in the US. Here in the US, when someone says something, people run with it and just create stories and narratives that is very much creating more harm and danger for the LGBTQI community. But simply, this bill protects trans people particularly, but also other LGBTQI students from not outing students, whether they're accessing mental health services, whether they're exploring medical advice from, folks in school about how they feel and who they are and what's happening. But also, Washington State, such an amazing place. Just knowing that um, people that work directly in power with legislators and even our AG's office, they've been fighting so hard on ensuring that whatever happens at the federal level does not put impact here at the state level. And so much of that work is happening right now. Um, even the push in terms of the tax that's currently happening. And I think most of you might know from last year till now, there's been more than 500 anti-LGBTQI bills. And like Sanjay said, particularly the attack is on transgender women, because of our existence and because of the way that we are more visible in community, perhaps. But it's just amazing, really, to see that no matter what happens in the way that we organize within the social justice movement or even within the LGBTQI movement, we always seem to come out to celebrate the very most identity that's the most impact or most affected, which is the trans community. And I know, Sanjay, and I resonate with you, and I stand in so much solidarity with you that there is a need to have a conversation, even within the trans community, about identity and what does representation look like within the trans community. Because there's not so much light put on the existence of trans men, particularly within the activism force of the way that we do this work. And also, I also think about the way that it's also about accountability within the movement. That there's this phrase that I've learned, um, that accountability is not a metaphor, that whatever we do should be an act of, that too often we use this very lightly, that we don't have to call people out. Let's use love and care. But also, we need to call people out to hold people accountable. It's not that we hate people, but people need to be held to account so that there's change that could happen. And that needs to happen. And I think last year we were at Creating Change, which is which is the biggest LGBTQI gathering in the US. Um, Miss Major was one of the keynote speakers, and who reminded us often, and even till today, that with whatever's happening in the world, and particularly here in the US, and how the world right now is really following what the US is doing in terms of the attack towards the trans community, towards the LGBTQI community. And she said that we need to take a nap. We need to then sit back, safeguard our peace, and safeguard the way that we've been moving so fearlessly, because we have to, because it's who we are in our nature. And we've all been highlighting that is the resistance, it's the resilience, it's all of that that we embody. And I also believe, like even here in Washington State, a lot of organizations are looking forward to Pride. We are looking forward to the celebration of Pride. But then there's also need to be a conversation in terms of what is the thing that really moves our guts to have this very uncomfortable conversation that needs to happen? Because a lot of us are very much just like it's this prickly relationship that we share, that we need to walk around people and walk by just to pretend like it's all these beautiful sets of flowers that we're given, but very much it's this old set of flowers that's given in old vases, but given to us to make it look like it's so beautiful. But it's the same thing that we need to talk about, which is capitalization, the capitalizations of our bodies and the way that we've moved around in this world. And and I really want to say, that shout out to every queer and trans people here in Seattle that are at the forefront fighting for climate and environmental justice, because that's such an important conversation that people ask me, why do LGBTQ people have to do climate work? What's the relation? I'm like, girl, we know what justice looks like. We know what the resilience look like. So we use that to then talk about, yes, we are equally impacted, but we are most impacted. And when we look at the way that climate is impacting women and young girls, And then we think about the way it impacts LGBTQI people, it's even more. And
Mm.
so I just want to say that, the that we as LGBTQI movement and people should start doing a lot of the climate and environmental justice work because it's important. A lot of countries that very much facing the direct impact of this, for them it's constant survival. It's 24/7. They have to move to higher grounds to seek shelter. Even here in Washington State, there's more than six communities that have relocated to higher grounds because of the rise of sea level. And not a lot of people are having conversations around that. And so that's something that I just really wanted to highlight as well, that we need to be very intersectional in the way that we're working, the way that we're thinking about ideas, the way that we also need to prioritize resting and self-care. And I love to say, to remind people of what Miss Major had reminded us, is to take a nap, rest your body, come back, and we can rebuild, we can reorganize, and do what we need to do. But we need to center the way that we need to center our bodies and need to center even our own peace to be able to come back and do this work. And also to every young person that is out here, we recently launched our youth advisory, our LGBTQI youth um, um, advisory committee within the Washington State LGBTQI Commission that's providing these young people space to have these conversations about what do young people really want at this time, because the future that we're thinking about later on is actually now. And to see young LGBTQI people come out to organize themselves, to say that this is what we want, this is what we're demanding, and for a lot of us who are here now to have this conversation, we then need to have that accountability to then say, yes, we need to provide this for every young person that's coming out, that's wearing um, this boldness and this fearlessness of having to organize as young people, especially in this country, I have to say. Um, it's just a lot of work, a lot of amazing work that's done by so many organizations like Utopia Washington, Gender Justice League, Lavender Rights Project, to name a few, and who are already working to ensure that the safety of LGBTQI people, particularly trans people, trans youth, queer babies, are being protected wherever they are and wherever they're moving. That's fundamental. And just ensuring that whenever we talk about human rights, we need to also think about what is that we really want to take out of what's not colonized as indigenous people and what was forced onto us to think that this is the way that we've lived. Remember, it's the same people who told us that this is wrong and we are wrong, are the same people who gave us the same human rights to tell us that this is who we are. But, darling, like Mela said, and everyone here said, we've been here long enough to tell people we know what it feels like to exist and to keep pushing who we are in this world and even globally.
Snaps for you, Miss Amasai. I agree with everything that you said. Thank you for bringing up the value of intersectionality of our social justice advocacy, because it's not just queer advocacy that we're fighting for. We're fighting for women, we're fighting for indigenous peoples, we're fighting for environment, for climate, we're fighting for every single person to be seen and to be heard. More importantly, thank you for highlighting the value of involving the youth, because what we're doing right now, they will inherit, and hopefully whatever they will inherit, they will foster it even more, and they will have their own advocacies to stand for and pass it on to future generations. But the loveliest that I've heard, taking a nap. We're not always resilient. There's always a moment in which we feel tired, we feel frustrated. That's why I want to bring this question up. How do you take a nap? how do you take care of yourself? Is there a favorite song, a favorite movie, a favorite activity that you go to, that you do, that you watch, that you listen to, that you dance? What's your activity in terms of taking a nap? Let me start with Miss Amasai. Maybe there's a dance step that you do. I don't know.
I'm gonna be really honest with you all. I don't dance and do all of that to take care of myself or to take a nap. I indulge in a cultural drink called kava, which is a root that is very much well known in the Pacific region, that is used culturally and traditionally. And so me and my partner, we both have kava after work. Usually when I come back after work, I just want to have kava. We mix it in with water and we just have it. It's not alcoholic, but it just calms your body. It just makes you feel like you just want to rest. And so that's my way of just coming home and just sitting on the couch and having cover with my partner and just relaxing, and it just slowly just it puts me directly to sleep. And so we have it almost every night, I won't lie. And yesterday we had it as well. We got to farewell my cousin, who's going to Fiji to visit his mother. And so it's that kind of drink. It's socially used. It's used traditionally, but I also like to use it just to relax and not think about what's happening and just um, zone out really and just have conversations about our families and what's happening. And I get to call my siblings and talk with them and just talk updates and what's happening in the community, who's dating who back home and what's happening. So that kind of tea. And so it really brings me um just joy as well, just to see my siblings and talk to people back home, and also even share things that's happening here. And what do we sometimes if we even think about, should we just move back home with everything that's happening now? And I'm like, no, I think no, we'll stay here and we'll see where this is going to lead us to. So yeah, cover is my go-to and I highly recommend it.
Kava from the Pacific Islands together with connections with family back home and some tea, some
Yeah.
figurative tea from back home. How about you, Sanjay? How do you take a nap? How do you rest and value self-care?
Um, I think for me that is a question that I'm still figuring out the answer to in a lot of ways. I've been a musician for over 20 years, so I play music. It's classical Western music, but I've been doing that since I was 10 years old. So that's a comfort thing. Coming home and hanging out with my cat. I noticed Miss Amasai's kitten, and I was trying not to say anything, but I wanted to just go, "Oh, there's a cat! There's a cat!" The whole time. Just loving on my pets. Sitting and relaxing with just some funny movies, and just things that I find comforting, as well as talking to my partner, which is always wonderful, even though we are long distance. Having that consistent support person in my life is really important, especially on the days when things feel extra heavy, like you were saying, Mela, like just knowing that there's at least one or two people that I can reach out to and say, hey, I'm really going through it right now. Can I just vent for a bit? And they say, yes, we have the spoons for you, vent away. Um, and just knowing I have those outlets and those pockets to find support with. But truly, the best thing is just my cat.
What's the name of your cat? I'm also a cat
I
person.
haven't I have an orange cat named Cheddar, like the cheese.
Okay. A, a cat, a chat with a partner, and a comedy. So three C's for you, Sanjay.
Yes.
Okay. And how about you, Miss Sarah? What's your self-care move in the midst of the advocacy?
Mhm. Because I have been in the field for such a long time. So at first, everything was so overwhelming. I remember one time I talked with a diplomat from the US. She suggested me something that I still carry with me until now. I asked her, like, I run a Facebook page called Not to Let to Be Equal, and did a lot of advocacy thing on social media. And there are so many times, a lot of like people would come and argue with my point of view. They would like shame trans women, LGBTQ, and non-binary. And I said to her that it was so overwhelming for me. I feel like everyone is not accepting like us enough to move forward to the progress of like legalization things. And she told me one thing. She said, Sarah, do not put this thing on your shoulder alone. It's a collective things to do together as a community. It's not just your responsibility to take this thing on your shoulder. After that, I learned that I should be more like calm and be more like to be less serious because it's true that we're still moving forward to the equality in the future, but at the same time, self-care is important. If we don't have the self-care, we might have like done something bad to ourselves, like suicide or like doing something bad. So after that, I have learned to take care of myself. When I feel bad, I just listen to music. I just like dance sometime and I make
Uh,
content. That's what make me feel like joyful. Sometimes I put my anger into my content. I release it in the content. For example, I deal with a lot of transphobia people. I jump into my CapCut and did some short video talking about transgender rights, transgender like empowerment, and I posted it and so many people come in comment and I was like, okay, I think I won today. And there are so many times that I have to jump into the conversation with someone because I am a very extroverted and open-minded person. So sometimes there got to be a lot of people being like misogynistic and transphobia towards me without knowing that doing that. Recently, I was just in among like the discussion of so many people who look down on women in my country or they have the opinion about that. So I feel so bad. But like in 2 hours, I learned to just like listen to something that make my ear enlighten, listening to women empowerment speech, Michelle Obama, or like jumping into some like music. For example, I like to like listen to like Idol, like it's a Korean like girl group. They do a music about women empowerment, like we not like base our standard on men or whatever. And I feel empowered because of that, and I can sleep peacefully after that.
that's good. Thank you for sharing. I'll listen to Ido. Ido,
Yeah,
is that
okay.
the Korean
Yep.
group?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll listen to Ido tonight and hopefully it will be a new K group that I will follow because I
Okay.
love Blackpink.
Oh, me
The
too.
I
Me
love
too.
Blackpink and BTS at the same time. So they are part of the playlist that I have. Thank you for sharing those self-care tips. And I'm pretty sure um, these self-care tips will always remind us, hey, it's okay to rest.
Mhm.
While the fight is an uphill battle, yes, we do our part in the collective advocacy. And thank you for highlighting that it's not our individual burdens um, per se, but it's a collective. It's ours to own, and it's ours to deal with. Um, at this point, let's entertain some questions from our audience who are listening right now. Um, let's see if there are questions that they're interested um, in terms of like knowing from you. Can we flash it in the screen at the moment if there are any? Or can we let in Jamie Ballesteros, the chair of AQUA DC, for our panel? Hi, Jamie.
Good afternoon, morning, and evening. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to our panelists. What a fantastic conversation. I I am inspired by this conversation about rest. I know our season is kind of just getting started, and that we're in the heat of API Heritage Month, and we got Pride on the cusp of Pride Month, and we've already started Pride festivities here in DC. Um, what are the things and movements that we should be looking forward to in the near future? So we've talked about rest, we've talked about uh, communities that we're involved in. What are the exciting movements that you're seeing burgeoning now that we ought to be paying attention to?
Okay. Anyone can answer. What are you looking forward to in terms of activities and movements?
I think I can start like
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
I think about two things. If it's in Thailand, of course, I want to progress with the gender recognition laws because we want to set an example of the transgender rights and movement in Thailand for the other country to see that trans right is something that people should be thinking about and taking important on. But globally, I want to have like the trend of shifting back our movement back to the day that like we do not receive this much hate because right now as we know that globally it has been shifting to another side. I just want like the trend to set back to where it should be, where like trans people can feel safe, secure, and have the space that they don't feel like they have to explain themselves in the society, or they don't have to hide themselves just because of the attack that is ongoing right now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Sanjay or Miss Amasai?
Go. Um, I think right now for trans people that live here in the US, or even for me, um, really it's just safety is a condition right now. It's a priority as well. I mean, it's a priority right now for a lot of people that belong in the LGBTQI community, particularly trans people. That, and I know we've talked about this, it's the attack that is coming from both sides and everywhere that we're seeing. And that, and I was thinking about where do we then look now for people that live here and organize here in the US? And I was thinking about maybe that we need to really look globally to our siblings that live abroad, to how do we then call for solidarity and what does that look like? And so I think for me, global trans solidarity must really move beyond symbolic gestures. It must really redistribute the power and really center local leadership and local um, movement builders and community organizers. And really, we need to talk about resources, girl. We need to fund grassroots and not the gatekeepers really. There's a lot of work done in the grassroots movement that resources and funding are stuck at one place and it's not trickling down to grassroots movement. And and we need to call for investments in the trans-led work. We need to, from the global south, here in diaspora, and especially for indigenous communities. And we really must listen more to those that are closest to this crisis. And our allies, but not really allies, but Sanjay said it so well, our accomplices who work alongside us, who are right beside us, to then listen more and pay attention in the way that we're facing displacement, we're facing criminalization, and we're even facing economic violence. And the way that we are moving right now. And so we need to then also, girl, we need to talk about the turfs, the way that they're organizing and rising in this country, in this world, globally. They're moving to attack the existence of trans people. And I'm like, girl, what did we do to you? What did we do to harm all of you? We living here, living our lives, living our truth. What else do people want from us? And so it's really a lot of work. Jamie. And I also want to say, when I was thinking about uncomfortability and uncomfortable conversation, that it's boiling in my gut right now that we need to have within the API, within the AA and NHPI community is representation. We need to talk about that as well. Representation, we need to talk about, okay, where's the resources moving and funding moving? Is it equally distributed within both AA and API, AA and NHPI grassroots organizing? We need to then have that conversation because if we're not having this conversation to each other, recently, we've recently here in Washington, we opened up a very new data that was collected to really desegregate data on education for AA and NHPI communities. Darling, we literally was shocked to see that even within that, our young people are suffering silently. And so it's this problematic because we're so lumped into one. We get to we really forget that the very marginalized and most impacted community, even within our own community, that we don't talk about, we need to have that conversation. We need to sit in this discomfort. We need to then sit in this silence, but we also need to start thinking and re-strategizing the way that we're redistributing all of this. Because if we don't, then it's this conversation. It's just ring around the rosy all the time that we always have to have conversations about this and that, data, research, who's doing it, who's benefiting out of it. So that's my really ask is if we're really gonna be human to each other as sisters and siblings of this community, then we need to say it how it is without being apologetic to the relationship that's shared, the way that we move in this world, and the way that we move to organize each other. Because I know for a fact, if I'm sitting in a room I'm going to talk about everybody and the amazing work that people are doing in the world and the amazing work that people are doing here in the US. I won't leave anybody behind because that's a principle that we should embody as LGBTQI people. Is wherever we move in different spaces, we bring people with us and we bring people who've even done this work before us because that's important. And even the conversation we've been having about young people, then we need to bring young people along with us and also show us what's needed to be moved. And I think that's for me just very important right now is how do we sit with this now, this conversation, but then how do we really move beyond and past this conversation and start saying that we need to share what is needed to be shared to other communities so that there's some sort of um, really meaningful solidarity, really meaningful accountability, and how do we really have this meaningful conversation? What does it even look like for all of us?
Thank you, Miss Amasai. And Sanjay?
So I think one of the movements that I would love to see gain more attention and momentum would be the um, sort of destigmatizing of our entire community as far as like AA and HPI folks as sort of that model minority where we have because a lot of our folks in diaspora and our ancestors and people who specifically within a US lens had to use assimilation as a form of safety and therefore saying, oh, well, see, you're not like the other minorities, say specifically in the United States, who are causing issues and recognizing that like we still all experience racism, we all experience forms of discrimination and like Ms. Amasai was saying, there's not enough data on us. There isn't enough research being done in our communities to find out what is impacting us the most. And I think specifically a movement I would love to see is more collective API and HPI solidarity of basically all of Eurasia. And because I know, at least within the United States, when people think Asian American, they think Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Generally, sometimes they'll remember that Southeast Asia exists. Sometimes South Asia, forget it. Like we don't exist in the Asian conversation in the United States. I mean, I've had people say, "Oh yeah, I forgot India is part of Asia." So really leaning into our community collective solidarity and going, okay, like you said, Mela, like, you know, who are we all talking to? And like you said, Ms. Amasai, making sure that nobody is left behind in any of the spaces or any of the conversations, because this is impacting all of us. I am always thrilled and hopeful and just inspired by the youth, and seeing the work that they are doing. And I kind of see myself as a bridge between some of the older generations and the youth, and being able to sometimes fill in the gaps in communication that might not be there, sometimes, because the youth are like, we got this, we know what we're doing, but sometimes they might need that guidance from our elders, but they don't know to ask the elders. Or we were all youths and teenagers and kids once, and we all thought we all had the best ideas and that our way was brilliant and we didn't need help from anybody, because that's how kids are sometimes. But being able to say, no, look, our elders have done this. It's okay to talk to them. It's okay to use them and their knowledge as a resource, not to stop what you're doing, but to enhance the work that you are doing and make it even more powerful and grow, rather than feeling stuck or trying to reinvent the wheel or things like that, because that happens with every generation, that happens with every movement. And I think more intergenerational solidarity is a movement that I'm really looking forward to see grow, um, over the next months, years, however long.
Thank
Mela, if
you.
I may,
Go ahead.
sorry, something just popped out into my head when I think about trans organizing in the US. I want to acknowledge, the way that our Black trans sisters have been organizing throughout so many years. And I know when I talk about this, I get so emotional because just thinking about the injustice that our Black trans sisters have to go through every day, just having to wake up another morning and just to having to um, negotiate the existence and the way that Black trans women have been attacked um, everywhere, and just seeing the way that Black trans women have been organizing and really holding community together. Such an amazing work, because I believe that without the hard work of Black trans,
I think we lost Miss Amasai for a bit, but if I may answer the question, um, I would like visibility and representation to be fostered, and I want the movement to tell more stories about us. Thus, as a media practitioner, as part of the entertainment industry, it is my intention to keep on telling our stories through podcasts, through hopefully a documentary, hopefully through a film, hopefully through a photo exhibit, uh, and producing these things will allow people to see, oh, this is what a trans person from the Pacific Islands um, look like, live, act, and be a part of the society. And I think we have with us Miss Amasai back. Miss Amasai?
Sorry,
No, it's okay. Please continue.
internet again. Yeah. So, um, because also, Mala, colorism also exists in the Pacific region. Um,
Absolutely.
anything proximity to blackness is seem to be a problem. And so, um, uh, the work around anti-blackness is very important within our AA and NHPI community because it's really not about the guilt, but it's about the responsibility that we have to each other. And when we say we believe in justice, we must really confront how anti-blackness shows up in our families, how it shows up in our cultures, and even in organizing spaces. And and I really love that frame, that we are not free until Black people are free, because it's really rooted in racism and oppression. And it's not just here in the US, it's everywhere. And so that I just want to just to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you for highlighting that, Miss Amasai. And we would foster that. We would foster those stories because it is through storytelling that allows us to look into different narratives. And as I've mentioned, as part of the entertainment industry, I want the movement of visibility and representation to be fostered. Because if our stories are present there, then we will be able to dismantle the single story that has been prevalent. And this single story is about us being being an aberration, us being a mistake, us being unacceptable in the society. And I think Sarah wants to mention something.
Yeah, I want to add on what you said, Miss Mela, because I also work like in the entertainment industry as well as a present host, and I see how media can shape the perception of people through what you say about documenting transgender rights, transgender life, and transgender identity in media. I have seen firsthand last year in Thailand, we were having like one TV drama where they feature a transgender mom who is normally taking care of her son and guiding him to be like a normal, like and happy teenager. So with that representation on media, people appreciated that series, TV series so much that they showcase the transgender mom. Like to let the world know that transgender women can also be like mother figures to everyone in the entertainment industry. And at the same time, last year we also had two transgender lesbian in the Girl Love series, and they accept the award as a rising star, rising couple together. So I think it's a very subversive move of Thai entertainment industry to feature more representation in media, and they acknowledge the world and the society that it's not just about like being in the heteronormative norms, but it can be in like a very diverse and inclusive representation on media as well.
Absolutely. And hopefully, these movements that we've mentioned, we will be able to see it 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or maybe next year. We don't know. But I'm really happy to have met you today. I am blessed, Miss Amasai. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sanjay. Thank you, Miss Sarah, for saying yes to this conversation. It means a lot to me to build connections with you today, and hopefully we can be friends and we can be siblings. Even though we are far apart, the vision is clear. Hopefully, one day there's a trans convention in which we can physically be present. And who knows, Aqua DC can be the first first organization
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
host that. That's why
yeah,
we will be knocking
yeah.
on the door of this friend of mine who has always been passionate about inclusivity, about LGBTQIA plus rights, about representation, about equality. And he is the one who pivoted and made this event possible. And when he invited me, there's no other way but to say yes. So, to close our fruitful conversation, let's hear some inspiring words from the person who made Aqua DC at its peak right now. Please welcome Jamie Ballesteros.
Thank you, Mela. Yeah, this is a great conversation about how we show up for one another, right? Visibly and intersectionally, right? Shameless plug for an event that we're doing next month. Trans Pride DC has always been intersectional, but we're doing a book club on the book Black on Both Sides, The Racial History of Trans Identity. And that's a collab between two Asian orgs, right? Us at AQUA and Kush, a South Asian oriented org. But yes, let me wrap. Friends, allies, what a truly incredible experience this has been to share this space in a global time zone environment. And I want to thank you for sharing this space with me, right? I am not part of the trans community, but I'm certainly an ally and I'll always be there for you. And as we wrap up, I want to offer my heartfelt thank you and a personal renewed sense of purpose for all this, for our panelists, Amasai, Sanjay, and Sarah. Your insights, your candid stories, your grit and wisdom and commitment to this trans movement and trans excellence not only enrich this discussion, but light our path ahead. So we stand on your shoulders as giants as we advocate for our audience and show them that they can thrive and build, as Ms. Amasai said, their dreams every day. And to Ms. Mela, right, our phenomenal host, your grace, as always, your passion, your ability to connect us has made this program shine. And in your own right, you're an absolute inspiration to us all. And very excited to announce some of the things that you've teased as collaborations in the near future, perhaps a reconvening of this group in person at some point, either for Trans Pride DC or for an AQUA API conference, maybe at WorldPride Amsterdam next year. And of course, none of this would be possible without Bianca Sprague, the director of Trans Pride, who unfortunately isn't able to make it today. But without which, I wouldn't have been dragged back into doing this work with AQUA, right? Which, shameless plug, works tirelessly to build Asian and Pacific Islander queer visibility here in the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area. So we started this conversation, right, acknowledging the tough realities of what exists in the world today. And the question we pose is, where do we go from here? And the panelists have answered it, right? We move forward. We do it armed with the resources and the knowledge and the standing in solidarity with not only this trans community, but our broader communities that we interact with, and driven with this clear conviction that our lives and our identities are non-negotiables, right? So we have to keep organizing, we have to keep advocating, keep educating, and as Ms. Amasai says, writing our own dreams and stories. So as we celebrate not only Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month and honoring trans history and championing our community, let's not do it only in these 2 months, right? This month and next month for Pride. Let's keep pushing, but be there to reassure one another, take the rest, drink some kava, dance, and be defiantly joyful. So thank you all for being part of this moment. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to welcoming you to the rest of WorldPride, right? Check out our book club, check out the lineup at qtapidc.org/API Pride. We've got everything from drag brunch to book clubs to nightlife to diplomatic and congressional and cultural engagement events. So come enjoy. If you're in the DC area, come join with us for, I think we have 1 or 2 more virtual events, but stand, be defiantly joyful and visible. And this journey continues, right? We're going to walk in it together. We're going to build a bright future where trans people don't have to worry about just walking around anymore. And we're going to universally celebrate. So with that, good night, good afternoon, good morning, happy Pride, happy Heritage Month.